There are a couple of the finest game series out there that definitely deserves a comeback. These are the games that left a great impact on the genre, and even shaped the modern title. Some of them might just be your favorites too, so let's look at the first title on our list. Jax and Daxter. The Jax and Daxter series is one of those classic nostalgic games that feels like an essential part of PlayStation's history, especially if you grew up with platformers. The precursor Legacy is a pretty decent game because you can immediately get hooked on its seamless open world exploration where you can run from one end of the map to the other without any loading screens. It was mind-blowing at the time, and the vibrant cartoony art style really stood out. The platforming and puzzle solving are super satisfying, and the whole eco power system adds a cool layer of mechanics, giving you the ability to use different powers. By the time you get to Jax 3, it blends the best of both worlds, the desert wasteland setting, new vehicles, and the combination of platforming and gun combat felt just right. It was a great way to close out Jax's story. The series really nailed that balance of humor, story, and action. It starts lighthearted, but by the end, you feel like you've gone through this epic, emotional journey with Jax and Daxter. It's one of those trilogies that I'd recommend to anyone who loves a good adventure, especially if you want to see how Naughty Dog evolved into the storytelling giants they are today with Uncharted and The Last of Us. It's a piece of gaming history that still holds up in its own quirky way. Some of you guys have probably no idea the real importance and impact of this series. Literally, Jax and Daxter is probably one of the best series from this list that deserves a comeback. Dead Space. I know that we have gotten a remake, but listen to me, Dead Space is the series that definitely needs to come back. We want to see more games or more remakes. This is one of those series where the tension, horror, terror are at its peak. Trust me, the game is no joke. There's this constant tension no matter what you're doing, which makes the experience quite immersive. The thing that sets Dead Space apart from other horror games is how it uses silence and sound. You can be walking down a quiet, dark corridor and all of a sudden you hear something skittering through the vents or creeping behind you, and it's never where you expect it to be. The jump scares in this series are brutal but done right, they feel earned, not just cheap shots. Then there's the combat. Unlike your typical zombie games, you can't just headshot these necromorph creatures and move on. No, Dead Space makes you dismember them, aim for the limbs, and trust me, that doesn't make things easier, it just makes the fights more chaotic because you're constantly thinking, okay, which limb do I cut off first to slow this thing down? Each game in the series is unique in its own way. Long story short, the second part ramps up everything, more action, crazier enemies, but without losing that deep, suffocating horror. And the third part takes a bit of different turn. It leans more into action and co-op, which some fans were iffy about. If you're into games that keep you on edge and have you questioning every sound, this series is a must-play. I wish that we will get some sort of announcement about the next Dead Space or the remake. The Infamous series. One of the best series I have ever played just because of the powers. Not gonna lie, Second Son is definitely a great game with 4 amazing powers. The series has a lot of potential. I'm sure that the reviews or the audience response will be pretty good as people will love to just sit back and mess around into the open world. You can even say that it's pretty much prototype but on the safe side. The Karma feature is a great addition. I really think that the developers can upgrade it to crank up the fun. The replay value increases as we start wondering about the different outcome. It's nice to include the feature of whether you want to be a saint or go full berserk mode. The choices aren't always black and white either. Sometimes being the good guy is tough when you see how much easier it would be to just wreak havoc. Plus, depending on your karma, the people of the city either love you or totally fear you, and it's cool how that changes the vibe of the game.
Eye for an eye, asshole.
If you've ever wanted to feel like a superhero or even a supervillain, this game nails that power fantasy. You start off as this regular guy, but then you get these insane abilities tied to electricity or other elements like smoke or neon, and the city becomes your playground. The parkour is super smooth, running and jumping across rooftops never gets old, and the powers you get just keep ramping up the fun. 1 second, you're zipping through the streets with speed, and the next you're blasting enemies with lightning bolts from your hands. If you're into open world games where you actually feel like you're making a difference, whether it's saving the city or destroying it, the Infamous series is perfect. The mix of powers, parkour, and choices make it so addicting. There's no doubt in my mind that the sales will be awesome if the developers ever decide to make a new Infamous game. Onimusha. I remember playing Onimusha Warlords, the first game in the series, and being totally hooked on the unique mix of hack and slash action and puzzle solving. You control a samurai, often with historical influences, and the gameplay feels kind of like a mix between Resident Evil and Devil May Cry, but with more of a focus on traditional Japanese swords and demons. One of the most satisfying things in the game is using the Isen technique, which is a perfectly timed counter that lets you slash through enemies with a single strike. It feels so rewarding when you pull it off. Plus, the dark, mystical atmosphere is what sets it apart. The main enemies are these demonic creatures called Genma, and you also get to absorb their souls to power up your weapons and abilities. That soul-absorbing mechanic adds this extra layer to combat that makes it feel strategic, like you're always balancing the risk of collecting souls while fighting off enemies. Later games like Onimusha 3 even brought in a time travel element, which was wild. You got to see feudal Japan cross paths with modern-day Paris. The storylines are all about honor, revenge, and saving the world from dark forces, so if you're into historical samurai themes, mixed with some supernatural craziness, Onimusha is definitely worth checking out. Just for the sake of being a classic series, I really think that Onimusha deserves a comeback. Splinter Cell. The Splinter Cell series is one of those stealth action franchises that really made an impact back in the day. I remember playing as Sam Fisher and feeling like a total badass as I snuck through shadows, taking out enemies without making a sound. The thing that stood out for me right away was how the game rewarded patience and precision. This wasn't a run and gun shooter. You had to think about every move, sticking to the shadows, using gadgets like night vision and thermal goggles, and staying undetected. If you made noise or left bodies in the open, enemies would go on high alert. I loved that tension. It kept me on edge, forcing me to plan my route before making a move. Each level felt like a puzzle where the solution was stealth. Different games in the series offered a mix of mechanics. For example, in Chaos Theory, they introduced more freedom in how you approached missions, and the co-op mode was a blast with a friend. Conviction shifted gears a bit, making Sam more of a lethal on the run agent, which some fans loved for its faster pace, while others missed the pure stealth focus of earlier games. But no matter which game you're playing, there's always this feeling of being in control of the battlefield in a subtle, calculated way. You're not there to blow everything up, you're there to outsmart your enemies, complete your mission, and disappear into the shadows like you were never there. It's a stealth series that set the bar pretty high. Max Payne. Oh my god, literally this is our favorite teenage memories. Don't even get me started on how many hours I spent on this game, not to forget the multiple times I died. Max Payne is a fan favorite series that definitely needs a comeback. The remake is a great thing, but I hope that someday we get a game similar to the original. Nothing can spark that feeling that the original did. Low-key, I played the game again just a couple months ago. It was such a great experience. Plus, all the nostalgia was hitting the right spots. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, you're in for a surprise. Although it's still unbelievable that people don't know about this gem. The weapons, the levels, the areas, the difficulty, the enemies, it all speaks perfection Of course, the graphics or the textures are outdated because the game is quite old. However, if you can adjust yourself or have no trouble playing old games, then please give Max Payne a shot. Or you can also wait for the remake. We probably will get the remake next year. Anyways, third-person shooting has never felt this satisfying. Bullet time mechanic added 5 stars into it. That was the first time I actually saw something like that. It felt so great, it's as if you have got a superpower. Bullet time makes you superhuman. Who remembers that feeling of headshotting 4 to 5 guys in slow motion? Nevertheless, one thing is for sure, that even if the newbies don't appreciate the new game, us nostalgic gamers will surely love to try out another Max Payne. HalfLife. The HalfLife series is just incredible, honestly. It's one of those experiences that completely changes the way you think about first-person shooters. What I love about it is how immersive it feels. There's no cutscenes, everything just happens around you in real time. You're in control the entire time, and it makes you feel like you're living through the disaster, not just playing it. Half-Life 2 took everything the original did and just cranked it up. The gravity gun alone is a game changer. Being able to pick up objects and use them as weapons or solve puzzles felt revolutionary. The physics system in general made the world feel more real, more interactive. Plus the story goes way deeper. It's a classic US versus them scenario, but with a sci-fi twist. The series has such tight gameplay and amazing world building, and the way it blends shooting, exploration, and puzzle solving is seamless. Half-Life Alyx took that immersion even further with VR. It feels like you're physically in City 17. If you ask me, then Half-Life series was way ahead of its time. It had a lot of amazing features which weren't present in any other games of that time. Every time I think back to it, I can't help but admire how it laid the foundation for so many modern shooters. Left 4 Dead. If you've played Left 4 Dead, you know it's all about that adrenaline rush. You and 3 other survivors are thrown into a zombie apocalypse, and your main goal is simple: survive. But what makes this series stand out is how intense it gets. The AI director, which changes up the zombie spawns and item placements every time you play, makes sure no 2 runs are ever the same. One moment you're cautiously walking through a deserted alley, and the next you're getting swarmed by a horde out of nowhere. And don't even get me started on the special infected. When you hear that witch is sobbing, or the scream of a hunter leaping, your heart rate just spikes. You learn real quick which ones can wreck you if you're not paying attention. Then there's versus mode, which is a whole different beast. Instead of just surviving, you get to play as the infected, and hunting down other players is way more fun than it has any right to be. The coordination it takes to ambush survivors as a team of special infected is super satisfying when it works. Even though you've only got a handful of characters, their banter and little quips make them feel alive in a world filled with death. Left 4 Dead is one of those games that never really gets old, especially when you're playing with friends and everyone's yelling at each other to not startle the witch. Deus Ex Series. The Deus Ex series, man, it's one of those game franchises that leaves a mark on you, especially if you're into immersive RPGs that give you a ton of freedom. It's all about choices, how you approach missions, what kind of character you want to be, and even how the world around you react to your decisions. It blends this cyberpunk setting with a deep story that really pulls you in. If you've played Deus Ex Human Revolution or Mankind Divided, you know the drill. You play as Adam Jensen, a dude who gets augmented with all these cybernetic enhancements after an attack leaves him nearly dead. And from there, you dive into this world full of conspiracy theories, shadowy organizations, and futuristic tech. It's got this Blade Runner vibe where corporations basically run the world and normal people are stuck in between. The coolest thing is how you can play the game your way. If you're into stealth, you can sneak through entire missions without being seen. Or if you're more of a kick the door kind of player, you can augment yourself into a walking tank and just blow through enemies. There's hacking, dialogue trees, multiple pathways to complete objectives. You never feel boxed in. So yeah, Deus Ex is the kind of game that scratches the itch for those who love a mix of RPG mechanics and deep world building. It's not just about shooting or sneaking, it's about shaping how the world responds to you and the choices you make along the way. Castlevania. The first thing you notice is the atmosphere. Everything from the creepy soundtracks to the haunting visuals just pulls you into Dracula's cursed world. The early games like the original Castlevania were all about precision and timing. Every jump, every whip strike had to be perfect, or you'd pay the price. It was brutal, but that's part of what made it so satisfying to finally take down bosses. Castlevania has always been a series that just combines the good old gothic fantasy world with a touch of horror. Sure, it's an old game, but you can still have a lot of fun, assuming you have no trouble playing outdated games. As the series evolved, you got games like Symphony of the Night, which was a total game changer. It took the series in a more open Metroidvania direction, giving you this massive castle to explore, secrets to uncover, and RPG elements like leveling up and finding better gear. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, but mastering the castle and becoming stronger. The more recent titles like Lords of Shadow shifted to a 3D action adventure style, which was a bit divisive among fans. Personally, it felt like it had some God of War-like vibes in terms of combat and scale, but it still held on to that core gothic horror that makes Castlevania feel like Castlevania. Way of the Samurai. It's not like your typical hack and slash or samurai games like Ghost of Tsushima. The series is all about player freedom and choice in a more grounded way. Let me tell you something, this was one of those games that I found out because I was looking for samurai or ninja games to play on my low-end laptop. At that time, I didn't know a lot about games, but still, I'm glad that I stumbled upon this series. If you really want to experience the feudal Japan, or just a time when everybody's wearing kimonos and living a more traditional Japanese lifestyle, then you're at that right place. Way of Samurai perfectly nails the concept of typical samurai era. There are all sorts of features and places to visit such as dojos, entertainment district, forests, inn, and a lot more. Basically, you can experience what it's like being a perfect samurai who's in touch with the roots. There are multiple parts in the series, and the best thing is that with each part, the developers upgraded something, whether it's the graphics or simply adding new content. What I love about it is how the choices you make, big or small, can completely change the outcome of the story. You start as a ronin coming into a town that's on the brink of chaos with warring factions, political tension, and rival clans, and it's up to you to decide who you ally with, who you betray, and whether you're going to be a hero, a villain, or just a wanderer passing through. You can literally kill a major character in the first few minutes, and that will alter everything. You can get multiple endings based on your actions, and no two playthroughs feel the same. Before I reveal my final pick, here are some honorable mentions. Classic Warcraft,
At your call.
OG Dark Souls style, Halo, Age of Empires, Prince of Persia old style games. This is it, guys. Pop is a series that I'll forever be grateful for that I got the chance to experience. So many memories and moments are linked with this series. We all love a mix of hack and slash with parkour, and when you combine it, puzzle solving and time rewind, it's literally heaven. Sure, the developers decided to go with the Assassin's Creed, and I'm not trying to start a beef, but for me, Prince of Persia is much better than AC. Also, we have gotten 2 new games this year, but they are completely different from the OG third-person style. That's why I wish that someday Ubisoft decides to reboot or just simply make a new game. Now, we do have multiple games to talk about, but hey, I think each of us has our own favorite pop games, so I just want to briefly talk about each of them. In my opinion, Two Thrones is the best one as it has every feature at its prime. Plus, the addition of Dark Prince and the chain weapon takes things to the next level. Then, we also have Warrior Within, which I believe is the dark horse of the series. Sands of Time is the widely known title in the series, but I think it's a bit outdated compared to the other titles. Low-key, I recommend watching the movie as well. Anyways, other than these three, we also have some underrated ones like Forgotten Sands, some mobile games, 2008 Pop. These games aren't much worth describing as the only three best games in the series are the ones I mentioned above. It's no doubt that some of us know about the potential of the series and are connected with it because of our teenage memories. We all want the developers to give us another perfect Prince of Persia game. Alright, this completes our list of some of the deserving series that desperately needs a comeback. Each game in these series is a masterpiece in its own, whether it be the zombies of Left 4 Dead, or the parkour in Prince of Persia, and the horror of Castlevania. You could also say that this list rather contains your old memories and a bit of nostalgia. This could also be titled as some of the best old games that you must play. Anyways, if you have made it this far, then please subscribe as I'm close to reaching 24,000 subscribers and join my Discord for giveaways.